Alrighty then, it's time to do another video. And today we're going to be talking about a very interesting what if. So today we're going to ask, what would happen if Joseph had become the ultimate life form instead of Cars in the final fight? So in this timeline, Joseph would somehow become ultimate life form, and Cars would never actually get that chance to become it. So how would it affect the franchise, and what could an ultimate life form Joseph change in the later parts? And how would it affect the rest of part 2? Well, let alone how would it affect part 3 as well, and also 4, 5, and 6? Well, I'll answer this today, and I'll say what I think would happen. So let's talk about the first part to change, and that's 2. So most of 2 obviously goes the same up until the final fight, where Joseph becomes ultimate life form. As for how he becomes it, I'm going to go with the assumption and assume it's an accidental transformation, because I don't see him doing it intentionally. So I assume the mask and the redstone, they all get combined together and they fall into Joseph's range, and maybe Stroheim's UV lights as well, helping to try to blast down at cars or something, only for Joseph to get in the way, and then he just becomes the ultimate life form coincidentally. For the sake of plot, we're going to go with the assumption. So Joseph is now ultimate Joseph. Cars probably is freaking out and probably gets angry, tries to attack Joseph, but Joseph just destroys Cars. And this would likely just leave Cars to either die to Joseph right here, or he ends up dying to the sun, or maybe just gets killed by Stroheim. I don't know. Probably Joseph, I would assume. So Joseph can get a kill. So Joseph's able to kill Cars and becomes the ultimate life form in the process. He's probably got a bigger accomplishment in this timeline. He probably impregnates Susie, and it is possible that the ultimate life form genes could just be passed down to the Joestars. I'm just going to go and assume it's not going to work that way, because I don't think that's how it would go in my opinion. I assume it would just be Joseph becomes the ultimate life form and it just doesn't pass down. Kind of like how Dia's vampiric powers or vampiric blood didn't pass down to Giorno or any of his half-brothers back in part 6. So I think the same logic will apply here with Holly, Jotaro, Josuke, and Jolene. So they aren't ultimate life forms and they don't have ultimate life form DNA. Like, I'm going to go with the assumption and assume that it's basically them not becoming ultimate life forms or pillar men out of this. So, like, they're actually still normal human beings. It's just their dad's the ultimate life form. Or in this case, grandfather, in Jotaro and Jolene's case. But part 2 would just be a lot shorter because Joseph becomes ultimate life form. And he would just be a lot stronger and look a lot better because of that. Now, moving along to Stardust Crusaders, the part would go a lot easier in this timeline. So for starters, Jotaro is still going to be in prison. Joseph's going to bust him out, and Abdul would also be with him. On a side note, Joseph could theoretically end up having a far better stand than he originally did. Because if you remember correctly, Joseph basically is now the ultimate life form, so like he could just get a better stand out of it. That, or maybe Joseph could just get nerfed like how he was back in part 3 originally. Let's assume Joseph still gets Hermit Purple, and let's just assume that Joseph is not nerfed for the sake of the plot. If Joseph does get nerfed, then I don't really know what would change. I can't really see what would change in the part exactly. But let's go with the assumption, assume that Joseph doesn't get nerfed. Off the bat, a lot of the story, they probably go to Egypt a lot sooner, and they might actually make it a lot faster. I assume the plane could still crash from Tower of Grey, so they could still meet Polnareff, and then that could just lead to the group probably just making it a lot faster than they originally did because, Joseph is just the ultimate life form. So a lot of group fights or Joseph exclusive fights would be a lot quicker. So Abdul still gets shot in the head and he still dies. And all that realistically kind of goes the same in the early half. The only difference is that a lot of fights that were Joseph exclusive, like Empress, that would just be a lot quicker because Ultimate Lifeform hacks. A lot of group fights like ZZ Top also would be a lot quicker. Inya fight would also arguably be maybe quicker. They could just actually like reveal a lot of characters a lot sooner than they originally did. But Ultimate Joseph should just realistically make a lot of the story easier. And I feel like Kakyoin would still get injured, like how Abdul would be. I think he'd still get bedridden in the story. Now, as for when it comes to the later half of Part 3, like, who cares about this whole adventure? We're going to the end. Younger Darby gets blitzed by old Joseph, by like Ultimate Joseph. So in theory, it's just a lot quicker there. Now, Abdul has more help with Jotaro and Kakyoin and Joseph, so he could actually live, but it's very unlikely, and I can't really see how it would happen. Maybe Joseph's fast enough to get to him, but I don't think he might be. So I think Joseph would get outspeed by Kareem in this instance, so Abdul would probably still die here, in my opinion. So I feel like by that point, Joseph would then decide to hold off Vanilla Ice while Jotaro, Polnareff, Kakyoin, and Iggy go to hide. Or Polnareff would just stay with Joseph. I think Kakyoin, Jotaro, and Iggy can go upstairs and then they can meet Nukasaka. Like in the canon, the only difference would be that Iggy's there instead of Joseph. And then Joseph and Polnareff can fight against Vanilla Ice, which they should defeat him very quickly, with Polnareff maybe losing part of his foot and maybe part of his hand like in canon, but I don't think he'd be as badly hurt. Like, probably loses part of his foot, maybe part of his hand, but like, that's all. His injuries wouldn't be that bad in my opinion. So the rest of Part 3 more or less goes the same around the ending half until like the split up, because Iggy would not be dead. So I think he'd probably just go with Jotaro and Polnareff. And since Joseph's the ultimate life form, I think Joseph would actually be able to figure out the time stop a lot quicker, while also finding a different way to try to reveal it. So Joseph likely would maybe be able to figure it out around the chase scene between the Senator Phillips chase scene stuff. He could actually figure it out here instead, and instead of having Kakyoin try to be the decoy, Joseph would probably say, let me fight him off, you play as my backup. Kakyoin can probably still set up the 20-meter Emerald Splash while Joseph fights Dio off. The only difference is that Kakyoin would probably just stay hidden instead, since Joseph wouldn't want him to get hurt. And then Dio would likely just stop time and then go and just attack Joseph, but do nothing to him. Honestly, Joseph would just tank a lot of Dio's hits. And while it is possible maybe Kakyoin could still die, I do believe that in this timeline he might live, because the ultimate lifeform IQ just probably would be able to reveal time stop a lot quicker. And plus, with also Kakyoin helping Joseph, they should be able to figure out time stop a lot quicker. Instead of having Kakyoin need to sacrifice his life, Joseph could probably use his 400 IQ to think of an alternative that doesn't lead to no one dying. So I think that by that point, the rest of the story mostly can have Jotaro and Joseph meet Dio again. Kakyoin probably is able to slow Dio down again, like how he would with like the 20-meter Emerald Splash, with Jotaro and Joseph probably helping. After that point, Dio may figure out that Jotaro can move in his time stop, so they probably just torture them. With Joseph here and also Jotaro, they should realistically be able to beat Dio here. If anything, they're able to defeat him a lot sooner, with like no casualties, with the exception of Abdel to Ice, because I don't really think that one would be prevented. But I do believe that Iggy and Kakyoin would still survive would end up surviving. Jotaro and Polnareff are also going to still live, and Joseph would obviously live. And Part 3 would more or less just kind of end more or less a lot happier, since more Crusaders are alive, with the exception of Abdul, unfortunately, but like, I don't really know if it'd be possible to save him at that point. So the next part to talk about here is part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable. Now on DIU, I feel like Kakyoin would probably just go with Jotaro in the beginning, so I think the beginning of part 4 goes the same, albeit with Kakyoin just there to be there for like Angelo's arc and all that, Akira arc, etc. Like there's really no difference except Kakyoin's just with Jotaro. Now, when it comes down to Joseph's return, since he's the ultimate life form, he should be able to sense Akira out a lot sooner and notice something wrong, like before Okuyasu gets involved to go to save Joseph. So Joseph should maybe actually just stop Red Hot Chili Pepper a lot quicker in this timeline. And assuming he does, that would actually be pretty helpful. So Joseph is able to defeat Red Hot Chili Pepper, like how he, instead of Okuyasu, I assume? Maybe? I don't know. It'd probably just be one of those two to stop the chili pepper stuff. And that whole thing gets the same with Joseph actually arriving and being the ultimate life form. So Josuke and Joseph would probably get to bond for a little bit, because father-son bonding, all that. And I feel like by that point, Joseph would probably still meet Shizuka, but him being the ultimate life form, he'd probably just do a lot better of a job taking care of her since he's not a senile old man. After that point, Joseph would probably be very healthy and just a lot better to overall help on the adventure. Plus, with Kakyoin still alive, you have 2 additional characters to help out on the Morio side, so it overall helps the flow of the part a lot better in my opinion. Now, when it comes down to how some of the fights would change, personally, I don't think a lot would really change, except that Kira could theoretically maybe be defeated a lot sooner than he originally was, as Joseph's could end up using Hermit Purple, and assuming Hermit Purple is actually strong enough to handle the Morio stuff with the Ultimate Life Form boost up, which could potentially happen. And if it can, then by that logic, Joseph could maybe find Kira. Assuming that Hermit Purple is not weakened down like how it was in part 4, because, with Ultimate Life Form boost, Joseph should in theory be able to do good here. Now, out from all the villains, Kira, and along with another villain who's going to come up later, Kira is one of the only ones I could honestly see defeating, like, Joseph at this point. Like, Ultimate Life Form Joseph, that's kind of his only weakness, Kira, at this moment. Because all of Kira's stands are good at getting rid of stuff. So, Joseph theoretically could just be wiped out and actually just lose a lot sooner. So he could get touched by Killer Queen and explode, or he could just get into sheer heart attack's range and just completely disintegrate, or he could just tank a bite the dust. It's likely one of those 3 could actually kill the Ultimate Life Form Joseph, and that means that Kira could actually be the one who defeats Joseph at the end. I personally don't think it'll happen, and I think part 4 would more or less just go the same, but with Ultimate Joseph and Kakyoin around. I think part 4 just really won't change, and I don't really see Joseph getting involved too much in the story. Except I could see him being more involved in Josuke's adventure, or Josuke's battles, in my opinion. Now, moving on to part 5, I cannot really see much changing. Like, I don't really think Joseph would be here. The only change that I think the final fight would change is Iggy would probably just be present with Polnareff. In my opinion, I feel like Iggy maybe can die in Narancia's place. Maybe. I really can't say there. But I don't really think much would change in the overall grand scheme of things. Part 5, more or less, just goes the same. The only difference is that Iggy's there. Maybe Kakyoin can replace Koichi, but, after that, I feel like he'd just return back home like how Koichi originally did. So, I feel like out from all the other returning characters, only Iggy and Polnareff, maybe Kakyoin, probably not. Only just do Iggy and Polnareff here, in my opinion. Now we are at the final part, Stone Ocean. So I feel like the beginning half, like the first 5 episodes, like Jotaro getting his disc stolen, and the whole thing with Gwess, more or less goes the same. So Jotaro, he loses his disc, and instead I feel like Joseph with the Ultimate Lifeform stuff would actually come to aid. Kakyoin can still have Tenmei, I assume, in this timeline, so he can probably just go along for the adventure, and that could just lead to Josuke coming along, and maybe some other Morio characters if Josuke feels like bringing them along. And that could just lead the part to being very easy in this timeline. Okuyasu around could actually prevent FF from dying. Hermes would die in the punishment ward. FF, I think, maybe lives, because if Okuyasu's there, he can help swipe away the guard from her, so she doesn't need to shoot herself, so she doesn't leave Atra's body. So FF would actually get to live, I assume. Weather Report still dies, in my opinion. I don't really think you're preventing that. A lot of the other later half of the story, I could see probably just going the same. I think Raquel may actually get to turn good in this timeline, since Hermes isn't there to kill him, and I also believe the cast would probably just be more accepting of him in this timeline, with just more Joestars overall to help out with the group. I think they could at least accept one or both of Dio's sons. Probably not Ungolo. Hard to say about Donatello, because he's probably doing his own thing, probably trying to get Jotaro's memories. Raquel's the only one who I could see them actually being willing to side with, and Raquel's the only one who I think would make the most sense to become an ally, so I think he would actually turn good. Now, I guess when it comes down to the final fight, I feel like it's hard to say how it exactly would go, but I assume with Ultimate Joseph here, he should speed it up, but like stated earlier, I feel like there's only 2 villains that can actually kill Ultimate Joseph, and that's Kira, because like in part 4 stated earlier with all the explosion stuffs, and Pucci is the other one. Now why Pucci? Well, he has 3 stand abilities that can honestly take out Joseph, let alone an ultimate life form. For starters, White Snake's ability to remove disc should knock out Joseph and put him into a coma, so realistically speaking, that should actually work onto him. And if Pucci can hide his body long enough, it's likely that, assuming that the ultimate lifeform thing is also a disc too, he could just eventually just decompose if Pucci just hides his body away. Or maybe he can just remove the ultimate lifeform thing and just kill him. If it's Sea Moon, I assume, seeing how the gravitational pull it has connection of, it's possible that it can use said gravitational pull to actually destroy the body of Joseph, and maybe even freeze him a lot sooner. And Made in Heaven likely is going to be fast enough to kill Joseph before any recovery, and plus it could actually just be fast enough to send Joseph into space like how it did with Cars. I personally don't think it would, but I feel like Joseph is going to probably just die to Pucci. It won't be to Kira in my opinion. It would make more sense for him to die to Pucci in my opinion. I just think it'd fit more of the story, just to have him finally go out here. Kakyoin is also here. He can help aid the group. Tenmei's here, Josuke, maybe the Moria Warriors are here to help. And I feel like the universe could potentially be saved. And I actually think there might not be a universe reset. Now, it's hard to say, but I think it's a possibility. But I could honestly see the overall franchise actually changing a lot for the better, since I think more characters would actually survive. So, thoughts on the video? Did you enjoy the video? It was a very interesting one in my opinion, and I really hope you enjoyed it. So at the moment, I'm not taking requests, so no requests right now, please. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.